We're going to start this evening with the pie. I'm from the deep south, so I love pies. And the best thing about them is they're really easy to make. You can play around with your crust, which is kind of the key to your pie, and come up with something for you. There's tons of recipes out there. On the sugar pie that we have this evening, you've noticed I've not given you a crust recipe because I really think you should go out and find the fat mixture that works for you. There's different kinds of things. You can use butter, you can use lard. Everybody has a preference of what taste they actually like. I'm a huge fan of full lard crust. So instead of frightening you with one of those this evening, I've made something different. It's a sesame walnut crust, which is what I'll be using tonight.
Isn't that a mixture of lard and butter?
And there's a little lard in here, but not a lot. So anyway, any nut allergies or vegans should steer clear of the pie when it's served a little later. But the key component with making a good crust is make it a day before. Really the best thing about getting a crust that doesn't come out too hard when you're making your pie and too stiff is to give it a good time to rest after you've actually mixed it all together and allow the glutens and everything to rest. If you're going to work with lard, per tablespoon of lard you use, you should add about a quarter teaspoon of sugar, because lard actually does have a really distinct flavor to it, so it sort of gets rid of that extra taste. Before you're mixing and you go back to making your crust, chill all your ingredients. Put the flour in the freezer, put the butter or whatever fats you're using in the freezer, and chill them really. They'll be hard, but get them really, really cold, including the bowl you're using. Work really fast. The reason I say we use a stand mixer for most things, you can do it by hand, but again, everything should be really cold. Your fingertips are really warm. The friction from the mixers, you combat that with having the bowl chilled and having all your ingredients chilled, and you try as quickly as possible to put it together. Wrap it up airtight and let it rest for at least an hour, ideally overnight.
You can also prepare the dough in a food processor, which a lot of times, because it's so quick and your fat is so cold, it gets the fat almost pulverized into these teeny tiny little pieces. And so when it bakes, when those fats melt, that creates the steam, and that's how you get your flake. But it's all your method, what works right for you. If you have a knack for the food processor versus the mixer, there's no right or wrong to it. Especially with crust, it will come to you naturally.
There's different ways you can lay your pie into your plate. You can use your fingers and give it a nice little ridge. You can use a fork. I just tend to fold it over and just make a little rusticy looking thing. It works for me. So for this pie is really one of my favorites because you can really throw it together rather quickly. You just need a cup of brown sugar. You can use dark or light. I use light. 3 tablespoons of flour, quarter teaspoon of salt. So all you do is once you've mixed your flour, your sugar, and your salt, you literally just lay it in the bottom of the pie plate. You then take condensed milk, which is about a cup, and you just pour it on top. Don't stir. Don't worry that it's bubbling. It looks all wrong. So while it's still bubbling, quickly just take about 3 tablespoons of butter and dab it. This is a step that I do in any pie I make. There is no harm with putting about 3 tablespoons of butter on top of any pie you're making, whether it be fruit pie. It just helps. It adds.
If you could deep fry it, you would.
This is true. And another good thing with this pie is, for those of you that aren't watching your figure, the day after you make it, and it's good to keep this on the counter. It'll keep for about 3 or 4 days. Is to take a slice and take about 3 scoops of vanilla ice cream and drop it all in the blender with a little milk with the pie slice, and it makes a very good milkshake. Take about a tablespoon of cinnamon. You just sprinkle that on top, and then you just pop it in the oven. And then David's going to show you the best thing on the top of this pie is to just use some macerated fruit.
So we're just taking strawberries, which I'm quartering. You wouldn't have to. You could slice them if you want. Just some blueberries. Then we have, 3 tablespoons of sugar, which you just put in there. We'll finish this later. And then we use, typically we use balsamic vinegar. The tang and the tartness of the vinegar works really well with the sugar and the strawberries once it macerates and you get the sugars back out of the fruit. So just a tablespoon, and then you just stir that up, and that's really it. You know, put that off to the side while the pie is finishing.
And then once that's done, put it in the oven at 350. And you put it in there for an hour. So don't worry, it's going to look, the pie itself is going to look, it's going to start boiling around the sides first. When it boils in the center, when it starts bubbling in the middle, that's when you need to start keeping an eye on it. That takes about 40-45 minutes. So that's sugar pie. It's just that simple.
The cake was amazing. I really, really liked it. I tried the sugar pie. It's just divine. It's really, really good.
The tart was absolutely fabulous. Absolutely wonderful. Well, the cake was great as well, but the tart was very good. So.